Julius Caesar. The name echoes through history. He is a byword for ambition, for ruthlessness, for power. But what drove this man? What did he crave? The answer, in part, lies in the Gallic Wars, a conflict that would redefine Caesar's destiny and change the course of Western civilization. Caesar's ambition was not simply for power, though he undoubtedly craved it. He sought glory. He sought to etch his name in the annals of history. And what better way to achieve this than to conquer a vast and wealthy land, to subdue fierce warriors, to expand Rome's dominion to the very edges of the known world? The Gallic Wars, a brutal 8-year struggle, would become Caesar's canvas. Upon it, he would paint a masterpiece of military strategy and raw ambition, a testament to his unyielding will and his thirst for greatness. But this masterpiece would come at a terrible cost, paid for in the blood of countless Gauls and Romans alike. This is the story of ambition unleashed, of cultures clashing, of a war that would forge an empire and break a man. This is the story of the Gallic Wars. Imagine a time when the Roman Republic, a rising power in the Mediterranean, cast its gaze northward, towards the untamed lands of Gaul. The world was changing, and the ambitions of Rome knew no bounds. The Republic, already a formidable force, was hungry for expansion, seeking new territories, resources, and glory. The legions, disciplined and relentless, marched with purpose, their eyes set on lands that seemed wild and unconquerable. This land, modern-day France and its neighbors, was a mosaic of tribes, a patchwork of cultures and languages, fiercely independent and resistant to Roman rule. The Gauls, as the Romans called them, lived in fortified villages, surrounded by dense forests and rolling hills. Their society was complex, with chieftains, druids, and warriors all playing vital roles. Each tribe had its own customs, gods, and traditions, yet they shared a common spirit, a fierce love of freedom and a deep suspicion of outsiders. The Gallic Wars, a series of bloody conflicts waged between 58 BC and 50 BC, marked a turning point in European history. For nearly a decade, the land was engulfed in turmoil as Roman legions clashed with Gallic warriors in battles that would decide the fate of an entire continent. These wars were not just military campaigns, they were struggles for identity, for survival, and for the future of Europe itself. It was a clash of civilizations, a collision of Roman military might and Gallic ferocity, a struggle for dominance that would leave an indelible mark on both victor and vanquished. The Romans brought with them advanced engineering, strict discipline, and a vision of order, while the Gauls fought with passion, courage, and a determination to defend their homeland at any cost. The battles were brutal, the losses staggering, and the consequences far-reaching. At the heart of this conflict stood Julius Caesar, a Roman general of cunning intellect and boundless ambition. Caesar was not just a military leader, he was a master strategist, a shrewd politician, and a man driven by dreams of greatness. His leadership would shape the course of the war and ultimately the destiny of Rome itself. He saw in Gaul an opportunity, a chance to win glory for himself and expand Rome's dominion. Every victory brought him closer to the heights of power, and every challenge tested his resolve. Caesar's campaigns were meticulously planned, his tactics innovative, and his ability to inspire loyalty among his troops unmatched. But Gaul would prove to be a formidable foe, a land of dense forests, swift rivers, and warriors renowned for their bravery. The terrain itself was an adversary. Thick woods concealed ambushes, rivers became barriers, and the weather could turn against invaders in an instant. The Gallic tribes, though often divided, united in the face of a common enemy, fighting with a tenacity that surprised even the seasoned Roman soldiers. The Gallic Wars were a pivotal moment in Caesar's rise to power, a proving ground for his military genius, and a springboard for his political ambitions. The campaigns tested not only his tactical skills, but also his ability to lead men through hardship, uncertainty, and danger. The victories in Gaul would make Caesar a legend, but they would also sow the seeds of future conflict within Rome itself. But they were also a tragedy, a testament to the human cost of conquest and the enduring legacy of conflict. The scars of war lingered long after the battles ended, villages destroyed, families torn apart, and cultures forever changed. The Gallic Wars remind us that history is shaped not only by the ambitions of the powerful, but by the courage and suffering of countless ordinary people caught in the tides of change. Before the roar of Roman legions echoed through their valleys, before the world knew the name of Caesar, the lands of Gaul were a world unto themselves. This was a place where the morning mist clung to the hills, and the forest stretched as far as the eye could see, sheltering a people whose lives were shaped by the rhythms of the earth, and the ever-present shadow of conflict. The lands of Gaul were a tapestry of diverse tribes, each with its own customs, languages, and beliefs. From the powerful Arverni in the Central Highlands to the seafaring Veneti along the Atlantic coast, every tribe had its own identity, its own proud history, and its own ambitions. Their villages bustled with life, their festivals echoed with music and laughter, and their warriors trained for the day when they might be called to defend their people. The Gauls were not a unified people, but a collection of independent entities, often at odds with one another. Tribal councils met in heated debate, alliances were forged and broken, and old grudges simmered just beneath the surface. While they shared a common heritage, their loyalties were first and foremost to their own kin and chieftains. This internal division would prove to be a crucial factor in Caesar's eventual triumph. The inability of the tribes to unite under a single banner left them exposed to the cunning strategies of an ambitious outsider. Imagine rolling hills dotted with fortified settlements, their wooden palisades a testament to the ever-present threat of conflict. These strongholds were both homes and fortresses, built to withstand raids from rival tribes and, later, the relentless advance of Roman armies. The Gauls were skilled warriors, famed for their horsemanship and the size of their iron swords. Their blacksmiths were masters of their craft, forging weapons that inspired both fear and respect. In battle, Gallic warriors charged with a ferocity that became legendary, their war cries echoing across the fields. They were a proud people, fiercely protective of their independence and their way of life. Their families, traditions, and gods were at the heart of their identity, and they would fight to the last to defend them. But beneath this veneer of strength lay a fatal flaw: disunity. The very independence that made each tribe unique also kept them apart. Unable to set aside their differences even in the face of a common threat, tribal rivalries ran deep, often erupting into open warfare. Feuds over land, honor, or resources could last for generations, and the scars of old battles lingered in the memories of every chieftain. This fragmentation made Gaul vulnerable to outside threats, unable to present a united front against a common enemy. Each tribe stood alone, their strength diminished by their isolation, their fate uncertain as the storm of Rome gathered on the horizon. Caesar, a shrewd observer of human nature, recognized this weakness and would exploit it ruthlessly. He saw not a nation but a patchwork of rival chieftains, each with their own ambitions and fears. He skillfully played Gallic tribes against each other, forging alliances with some while subduing others. Promises of power, threats of destruction, and the lure of Roman gold all became tools in his campaign to divide and conquer. This strategy of divide and conquer would prove to be a cornerstone of his success in Gaul. In the end, it was not just Roman swords, but Gallic disunity that opened the door to conquest, a lesson written in the blood and memory of a land divided. In 58 BC, Julius Caesar stood on the brink of destiny. He was not just a military commander, but a man whose ambition and vision would soon alter the fate of the Roman Republic forever. The world he inhabited was one of shifting alliances, political intrigue, and constant danger, where every decision could mean the difference between glory and ruin. As governor of Roman Gaul, Caesar craved military glory, and saw in the tribal divisions of Gaul an opportunity to expand Roman power and in turn his own influence. The Gallic Wars would become his proving ground, a place where he could demonstrate his tactical genius and win the loyalty of his legions. Each victory brought him more fame, more wealth, and more enemies back in Rome, where the Senate watched his rise with growing unease. However, to seize this opportunity, he would have to make a fateful decision, one that would plunge Rome into civil war and shape the course of history. The stakes were immense. To defy the Senate was to risk everything: his career, his life, and the fragile peace of the Republic itself. Yet for Caesar, the path forward was clear. He believed that fortune favored the bold, and he was determined to carve his name into the annals of history. The Rubicon River marked the boundary between Roman Gaul and Italy proper. It was a modest stream, unremarkable in appearance, but it carried immense symbolic weight. To cross it with an army was to break Roman law, to commit an act of open rebellion against the Senate and the Republic. The river became a line not just on a map, but in the hearts and minds of all Romans, a point of no return. To cross it with an army was an act of treason, a direct challenge to the Roman Senate and the established order. The Senate had ordered Caesar to disband his legions and return to Rome as a private citizen, but he knew that to obey would mean political oblivion, perhaps even death at the hands of his rivals. The choice before him was stark: submit and fade into obscurity, or risk everything for the chance to seize ultimate power. Caesar knew this, yet the allure of conquest, the promise of glory, proved too strong to resist. He spent a tense night in his camp, weighing his options, surrounded by loyal soldiers who looked to him for leadership. The air was thick with anticipation and fear, for all understood the gravity of what was about to happen. In that moment Caesar's resolve hardened. He would not be cowed by the Senate or by fate. With the legendary words "Alea iacta est," the die is cast, Caesar led his legions across the Rubicon, igniting a civil war that would consume Rome for years to come. The phrase captured the sense of irrevocable action, of a gamble from which there could be no turning back. As his soldiers waded through the cold waters, they knew they were marching not just into Italy but into history itself. This bold act was a testament to Caesar's ambition, his willingness to gamble everything on his own abilities. He inspired fierce loyalty in his men, who trusted him to lead them to victory against overwhelming odds. For Caesar, the Rubicon was more than a river. It was a symbol of his destiny, a challenge to the old order, and a declaration that he would shape Rome's future by his own hand. The crossing of the Rubicon was a declaration of war, a signal to Caesar's enemies in Rome that he would not be trifled with. The Senate and his political adversaries, including Pompey the Great, now faced a formidable opponent who would stop at nothing to achieve his aims. The die was truly cast, and the fate of the Republic hung in the balance as armies mobilized and alliances shifted in the shadow of impending conflict. It was a moment that would forever be etched in history, a symbol of audacious ambition and the relentless pursuit of power. Caesar's crossing of the Rubicon marked the beginning of the end for the Roman Republic, setting in motion a chain of events that would lead to the rise of the Roman Empire. The world would never be the same, and the echoes of that fateful decision still resonate through the ages. For years, Caesar had exploited the divisions among the Gallic tribes, playing them against each other to tighten Rome's grip on the region. However, the tide began to turn with the emergence of Vercingetorix, a young chieftain of the Arverni tribe. Vercingetorix was a visionary leader who understood that the only way to defeat Rome was to unite the fractious Gallic tribes against their common enemy. With charisma and unwavering determination, he rallied the tribes under his banner, forging a powerful coalition that posed the greatest threat Caesar had ever faced in Gaul. Gone were the days of petty squabbles and localized skirmishes. Vercingetorix instilled in his people a sense of shared purpose, a burning desire to cast off the yoke of Roman rule. His strategic brilliance and deep understanding of Gallic warfare enabled him to anticipate Caesar's moves and counter them effectively. From the ashes of division, Vercingetorix had forged a formidable fighting force, a united Gallic nation standing defiant against the seemingly unstoppable Roman war machine. The Gallic Wars had entered a new, critical phase, and the fate of Gaul hung precariously in the balance.